I can see your thumb. Oh, you'll have to go around. You do it well. Hello?
Welcome to the afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon constitutional, and thank you all for letting us be a part of your afternoon here on our YouTube channel. We're already 10 episodes in and already one strike on YouTube. So I think that's a good sign for a good start here. We've got a busy program, and we're going to jump right in. Again, thanks to our friends at the Government Accountability and Oversight Group, govoversight.org. We're fighting for transparency as fast as you can spell FOIA. It's our government officials' favorite four-letter word. Joining us from one of the great organizations, it has been too long for me to get to chat with him. He is John Whitehead. He is the founder of the Rutherford Institute, and he is in here in Charlottesville. He's one of the most renowned civil rights warriors, really. John, good to see you, sir. How are you doing today?
Well, like every day, busy with all the stuff that's going on in this country. We're in an upside-down world right now, and I think it could get worse the way things are going with the way the government's expanding and working with the corporate media and making sure that they control everything we do.
Well, and we brought this up, and you weighed in quite a bit on the issues with Fox News, and you talk about corporate media, and we've spent a good deal of time on the centralization of all the things, and how liberty kind of gets trampled first when we centralize all these outlets, the newspapers, the networks, I'm curious, actually, your thought on something, John, because I said this back in the crazy days when. The worst thing that could happen to society was some eccentric billionaire buying Twitter and announcing to the world that he had purchased the town square. And I know it's easy to mischaracterize Twitter as the town square, but I thought it was concerning because I don't think a town square, as we know it in liberty, can be owned by a person. Is that an unfair way of looking at Twitter or any of these social media accounts, John?
Well, I think they can own part of the so-called town square because the average American watches 150 hours of screen devices a month. The young people that I see today are totally addicted to their screen devices, and whatever it says on that screen device, they believe. And Charlottesville, Virginia, you mentioned Charlottesville. A fellow pretty close there named James Madison, who wrote our Bill of Rights, which when I talk to kids today, they have no idea what's in the Bill of Rights. The education system is just not teaching them. But he said we ought to mistrust all those in power. And the reason he said that is because they saw what happened in their day with the way the British treated them and this country and why they had to fight back. I mean, when you have freedom fighters like Thomas Jefferson saying that, the Tree of Liberty is basically, watered by the blood of rebels, and that's people fighting back. So today, I would say this: if you're a free thinker, you do not fit into the system.
Well, in the blood,
and you're watched, by the way. I mean, I've had informant NSA agents, FBI agents talk to me. Everything we're doing is being watched because they want to control us.
Well, especially now as we enter the world of artificial intelligence, it becomes even easier for the surveillance state without having to apply a human being to do that surveillance. They can teach a thinking computer to do it, can't they, John?
Well, the thinking computers are teaching us to think now. The doctrine of singularity, which I've written about in my books, Battlefield America being one, goes into the idea that early on, Google said by 2029, the human mind would fuse with the internet and everything we're seeing, AI, and it's moving in that direction. Recent journalists who have tried to deal with this Chat GPT AI entity, which can write articles and do all these things, have actually had discussions, and they came away saying, these so-called AI people can actually combat us and sneak around us and stuff. And some executives at Google resigned about 6 months ago, and they said, we created God with this AI singularity program. So we're coming into an era where to be a rebel is going to be someone who disagrees. I mean, when you have the Biden administration now, they're using, if you're involved in what they call disinformation, they're labeling people but domestic terrorists, essentially, which means they have to be watched. They're put into the main core program, and people do not know what that is, but there is a database the government runs called Main Core, which has millions of names in it of people who will, listen to this is a quote, will be rounded up in times of distress. I know this. I'm giving disinformation now, so I have to be careful.
Oh no, yeah, this is it.
What I'm saying is the FEMA camps that under the Bush administration were being built supposedly to deal with illegal aliens and stuff like that. I've been told by former agents of the government who have read my book to come by to visit me that they're already built. They're on the military bases. But listen, most people don't know the big picture. The big picture is this: the people who run the government out of Washington, D.C., there were two big studies. SMU did a really good study on where psychopathology congregated in the United States. Washington, D.C. was the conclusion of the professors. Then Princeton did a study where all the money congregated, the billionaires, Washington, D.C. So we're run basically by millionaires who are basically psychopaths, who do not care. They just want whatever they get out of you. They see us as the herd, as Henry Kissinger once referred to the American people, the herd. someone that can be rounded up. But with all this mechanical stuff we're seeing today, and again, we've written a lot on this, the war on free speech and stuff. It's all here, folks. People are afraid to say this word or that word now, and people are getting arrested for citing Bible verses now and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of cases we've been involved, which are just kind of crazy. And you're going, it's against the law to cite a Bible verse when you don't agree with somebody, and they're not threatening anybody. Right. You don't have to threaten anybody today. You just have to say the wrong word. And the future ahead, there's some hope if we can get our kids focused on the real world, on the Bill of Rights and things like that. The Bill of Rights is only 462 words, but I've had people, we have a pamphlet we give out to people so they can study it in their home. I had a fellow call me, I was doing a radio program, he called in and just said, hey, it worked. I'm teaching my kids the Bill of Rights. I said, but you pay all those taxes for a public school to do it, or a private
and
school. And they don't. They don't teach them. And the Declaration of Independence now is considered scary to a lot of teachers in public schools because it says if you don't like the government, throw it out. But here's the point. The Constitution starts with those three really good words, we the people do ordain, and it goes on. It says we are the sovereignty, the American people. The guys up in D.C. or the gals up in D.C. are our agents. They work for us. So we've got to stop thinking when I hear people say, I really will put my hand up high on government. And I'm going, no.
Yeah, no, it's John.
You're the government, man. Yeah. Be the government and get out there. You're like, get in your local city councils and stuff. What does the 10th Amendment say? Local governments can nullify acts of the federal government.
Yep.
Get your local communities where they'll just say, get all this crap we don't want out of our communities that you're putting in, federal government.
John Whitehead is on with us, Rutherford.org. You see the web address on the screen, the Rutherford Institute. We've talked about this so many times, and centralized power over these media outlets can really do damage to journalism, which is about questioning everything and not just presuming a conclusion. And unfortunately, we get so much caught up into personality, John, in this. And I know that can be a dangerous thing because once the cult of personality takes over, then it stops being about journalism. It becomes, well, I like so-and-so or I dislike so-and-so, so I'm not going to be curious about what's going on in there. And because these big corporations, and I watched Fox after they fired Tucker Carlson, or Tucker Carlson quit. I think there's a debate right now as to which happened and over what. Their stock didn't really move all that much. It went down for a little while in the morning, and then the shadow commerce that they engage in came back. It's removed from collect the most viewers, put advertisers in front of them, and pay the bills that way. There's an entire economy that's funding these corporations that have no interest in viewership or readership. And that, I think, is even more debasing to journalism than it is anything else. John, what do you think?
Yes, and journalism should be there to educate the public, to make them free thinkers. And that's why free speech is so important. I keep telling people we need it everywhere. Free speechers are people who make people think. In other words, you may not like this person coming in going, I think I've had people who disagree with me and say, what you write is, I don't agree with it. And they'll point their finger at me and I'll say, thanks for your comments, sir, and whatever. They create critical thinking, and that's what we need, critically thinking people. But again, like I say, the United States government, as they fuse with the corporations, does not want critical thinkers. Carl Bernstein of Bernstein and Woodward wrote a great article where he said after they outed President Nixon, he was shocked when he worked with the mainstream media a lot, how much the government worked and vetted articles, the NSA, the CIA. He said, don't trust the media. And when I'm watching CNN and even Fox, some of those programs, and I see the commentators come on, they say, here's this week's commentator, and it's somebody that worked for the CIA. Okay, well, the CIA, by the way, is one of the most corrupt organizations with the FBI that's ever existed, folks. go. I mean, again, I've written on this. It's on our website. Go
Hmm.
read it and see how corrupt they've been. Sneaking around, watching everybody from Frank Sinatra to Ernest Hemingway, trying to
Hmm.
put them in jail, and
Harry
they're doing that
Belafonte.
today.
Harry Belafonte just passed away yesterday, and he was when he started to become active. You mentioned Carl Bernstein, but there's another case. It was the assistant director of the FBI who turned out to be Deep Throat, going in and saying, "I don't like this, and I want to do these things, and I want you to publish this stuff." And that's where I think the questioning has to be supported. Kids, and I know that we've talked about this in the First Amendment, where they talk about freedom of the press. In 1789, press didn't necessarily mean the news media; it was encompassed into it. But your right to write pamphlets and your rights today, I guess we
Yeah,
call them blogs and things like that, because King George enacted the Stamp Act to try to stop people like Thomas Paine from publishing more common sense flyers or blogs, as we'd call them, John. I mean, that's something we need to keep voracious and still available on the internet.
that's great. Yeah, I remember the old days of the underground press when
Sure.
I was going to college. I mean, it was independent press that went off and criticized the government, but and the mainstream wasn't doing it. But we need more of that. We need, yeah, a lot of people out there on the internet talking, but confronting and getting educated. Education precedes action. I'm telling people, go to a good website like ours at Rutherford.org, get educated, learn, see all the stuff about the Constitution, things we should know, what we can do, and then just get active in your local communities.
Hmm.
Your local communities can do a lot. There are
Oh,
some
sure.
communities that are upset by the all the SWAT teams that were occurring in their areas. They're
Hmm.
removing the SWAT teams now. They're doing things like that, and they're doing that because they can. It's allowed under the Constitution that's been affirmed by the Supreme Court, and educate your children, boy. I mean, if you're a grandfather, a father, or whatever, and you care about your children, you will get them educated on their rights, and it does work. We tell kids they can start thinking free. They don't have to be indoctrinated and listen to everything a teacher says. You can disagree with the teacher.
Hmm.
Uh, we've had a lot of cases like that by where students do those kind of things,
Well,
and
sure.
that creates a model for change, what we need in a society that's moved in a weird direction toward information
Authoritarianism. It's
control.
yeah, it's
No,
authoritarianism, and it is something we have to. And why, being one of the most important questions you can teach a kid, is don't just accept something on its
yeah.
face. If somebody says, "Hey, this happened," you got to, and this is the basis of journalism, is asking why, and not necessarily. I compared it. I said, our dear friend John Grisham, another Charlottesville author. I mean, he comes up with an ending to his story. He knows what the story is supposed to be about. A journalist is supposed to really follow the story to whatever it winds up being about, and it's just continually asking why, where, who, what, and when you see the centralized media, and we talk about this with the newspapers as well, they cut back on the newsrooms, and our young people getting an education in asking why, because especially in the blogosphere, there's costs, and they wind up getting sponsored by a political action committee or something like that, and then they stop being curious if it makes their sponsors look bad, John. And I feel like that commerce has set back journalism a little bit. What do you think about that?
Of course it has. And what I'm saying is too, and the like I say, I talk to lawyers, like I say, who do not know what's in the basic Constitution. They're
Hmm.
not taught it. In fact, I had a young student in our intern program. This is a University of Virginia Law School. She came to and studied with us. She said, "I came here to study the First Amendment." I said, "But you're in law school." She said, "Our professor in constitutional law, the first thing he said during our course was, 'This year we will not be studying the First Amendment.'"
Oh my
She
gosh.
she said it blew her apart. She said, "What in the world?" And she comes to the Ruff Institute to get trained in the First Amendment. I'm saying, you're paying all that money and they don't teach that. But why don't they teach it? There are a lot of people in the education system that don't want the rebels. And what are rebels? That's people who care about others enough to defend another, to
Hmm.
get up and ask the question why, which politicians don't like either, and confront. That's what we need. I mean, the great men of the past. You mentioned Paine and all those people. They were people who asked why and said, we're willing to fight for the truth. We're not going to give up. We're going to stick in it to the end.
Hmm.
And we need more people like that. But you got to teach your kids why that's important. It's because we're human beings and they ought to treat us with respect. By the way, like I said, we are the sovereign power. They work for us. Don't forget that, folks.
So what is, and is, I'm still trying to grapple with the idea of a law class not studying the First Amendment. President Biden announces his reelection campaign, and he says, "Do you want less rights or more rights?" I just want the rights that we were born into here with, John, and I'd
Oh,
like
yeah.
somebody to stand up for those.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, they just don't. I mean, they want money. Like I said, those two studies show that they're there for money and
Hmm.
control. And we need to get people together. We need a more class of people who say, I'm going to fight back on this thing. It has to be nonviolent, by the way. The
Right.
First Amendment protects, nonviolent protest, and they can be effectively done. I'll give you a good example. Martin Luther King and people like that back in the 60s,
Hmm.
great organizers. He had field marshals and stuff for marches and stuff. He was very, very good at what he did, and he changed the face of the country. And like I say, one person can do that.
Oh yeah.
One person who has that mentality and can pull people together, and it can be done. Otherwise, sit back, do nothing, and be controlled. If that's what you want, you can have it. But if you don't want that, like I say, get educated on all the key principles and fight back.
There was a news item here on one of our local TV stations that was about a University of Virginia class the teacher actually titled it "Keep Your Enemies Closer" based on the Sun Tzu comment. And she said, well, what we're trying to do is get the students to stop viewing each other as enemies and view them as just adversaries. And I thought, my gosh, this still has got the wrong markings. We can't be looking at it even as adversaries. We're all the same, and we can't be sitting here allowing people to turn us on each other, because that's how we wind up with things like 2017 here in Charlottesville, right, John?
Turning each other, yeah, against each other, yeah. But that's what they want. They want you each other's face. They'd rather have you fighting, arguing over this or arguing over that, than being together. You get together, and what happens? You can change things. They don't want that. And what I'm saying is, I'm seeing in some local communities where they do get together, they can be very effective,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't need, to get violent or anything like that. And by the way, there's some sheriffs across the country who are now saying, I'm not following some of these dictates of the federal government. They're
Sure.
unconstitutional. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So get together with some of your local sheriffs and sit down and talk to them and say, how can we change things, and work with them and the law enforcement and local communities. And what we see today, we mentioned AI and all the things that are coming. Pretty soon, you'll not be able to tell reality from non-reality. That's coming.
Mm-hmm.
What's called the metaverse by Facebook.
Yep.
They're
Right.
going to create a fiction. And if we don't get our kids away from the screen devices, I say do this. Get your kids 1/3 of the day now, move your kid out of the screen devices, sit them down, talk to them, have debates, read books, talk about the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, go down the line, folks. You can do it.
Yeah. We'll
Parents are the basic educators anyway.
Yeah, we have some great rivers around here. Just walk along the river for a while and do that.
Yeah.
John Whitehead, Rutherford.org. Back to the issue with centralized media and what we're losing. I thought for a while the internet, where we are now, could be a hotbed of independence to that. But as the years have gone on between Meta and Twitter and YouTube, Alphabet, it has become more just like the old industrial media centers, BlackRock and the big movie studios. They're just cranking out the same things without having to build the big movie lots. John, is there hope that the internet can come back and be that place where people can do shows like this? I'm sure I'll get a note from YouTube about this program, and they'll say, we have a usage policy just like they did when we discussed COVID-19 and treatments for it with Dr. Paul Marik. I wasn't telling people what to do. I was just asking Dr. Marek what we should do. And as we're doing with you, the internet has become just like these TV networks and these networks and newspapers like William Randolph Hearst had.
Yep, and they're going to control everything. That's why, again, James Madison, that principle is the first principle of a patriot is we ought to mistrust all those in power. Teach your children not to trust everything they're seeing on the internet, news shows, and stuff like that, and what they see on television.
Except us.
Exactly.
Except us.
If they're just smiling and attacking the same person all the time, they're doing it for a reason. They're trying to draw an audience in, like you said, and make money off of the products and commercials and stuff like that. But it's going to have to start with the children. I mean, I'm young people today. Some of them are ready to think, but you're going to have to get them before they get too far down the line, or they're going to just be staring. When I go on vacation to the big cities, it's amazing. New York City, people crossing the street staring at their cell phones.
Oh, you see it.
What's going to happen? People won't move their cars at stoplights. They're reading their cell phones. It's become an addiction. You're going to have a robot. And Elon Musk might have said it best, though. He says, if you have a human dictator, that human dictator will die. You may have freedom. If you have an AI dictator, it will become an evil monster and you'll be in chains forever. And that's what we're headed for, folks.
Yeah,
if you don't get off the control of the AI monster.
And that's the frightening scenario, is because when news can be just created, you listen to this Chat GPS or whatever it is, the software that can just write stories, and you can have somebody sitting behind a microphone like we are and telling you that Eurasia is fighting with North America, and all of a sudden, I mean, I tell people you should read Animal Farm to your little kids and then work them up to it, because that's what we're looking at. And one of the things that I find, and I've brought this up to folks, I'm a weirdo because I keep bringing up the Third Amendment to the Constitution, and it's because I believe, as in 1789 parlance, soldiers meant officers of the government, and we have officers of the government. Elon Musk admitted it. They're in Twitter and they're in these rooms manipulating what we're seeing, but also, as you said at the onset, watching what we're seeing. Is all of this tantamount to, as I call it, a violation of the Third Amendment? Because we ostensibly have government soldiers, officers of the government, stationed in our houses through our technology.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But also you have over 80,000 SWAT team raids going on across America. Mainstream media doesn't report that. We have 200,000 federal agents armed to the hill with hollow point bullets now that are roaming around the country. And there was a 2030 video the government put out for training about 3 or 4 years ago for the police chiefs and their troops, which basically predicted by 2030 the country's going to break down financially and otherwise.
Oh, gosh.
They're going to have to institute martial law.
And that's what they want.
They're very paranoid, though. They're very paranoid. That's one thing we have a total surveillance state. Why they watch everything we do, and they watch everything we do. I know that, well, sometimes when I'm near my cell phone, I'll just mention an actor or something. I go back 30 minutes later, and there's pitches on there. I'm going, what?
How did that happen?
Nowhere. No, it's listening to you. And it was amazing. I had a former NSA agent visit me, and he walked into my office and says, no cell phones. And he came I took him into our boardroom and sat down. He went over and unplugged the landline too. And I said, you guys can listen to the landline? He said, we've been doing it a long time, man.
Oh, I'm sure it has been. And like I said, these are the soldiers. This is what King George did. He actually had to put soldiers in your house. Now they can come in. Talk about John. And I've had this debate. Well, you clicked the OK on the app usage agreement, and you agreed to use the app, which somewhere on page 748, if you printed it out, said, we will share information with third parties as we see fit. I don't believe, you're the lawyer, that's not informed consent. I don't believe that.
No, I don't believe it is either. No, it's not. But the point is that they've reached the level now where it doesn't really matter anymore. With geofencing, if you've heard of that, we've been involved in issues and cases now where they're watching whole buildings of people, churches, by the way, and they can tell where people are going, which direction, what they're doing inside the building, by the way. And I mean, we're there. We're there where George Orwell right now would wake up and go, "What did you people do? You didn't listen to a word I said
Yeah.
in 1984. The thought police are here, and they're invading our heads on a continual basis from every direction. And
It,
you just basically, in my opinion, have to run off and leave it alone, folks.
oh yeah, without
I'll
question.
be kind of be honest with you. I don't watch any of the mainstream media news
No, I
shows or
don't.
anything.
I go to
And
bed.
people say, "Well, how do you know the things you know?" I do research,
No, you dig, and you have to get multiple sources. I mean, you can't just say,
multiple
"Oh,
sources. Yeah.
this website told me that," and then you go ask, "Well, what does this one say?" John, last one for you, and again, it goes back to what I was getting at the onset of this, of the centralization, the presidency. When Queen Elizabeth passed away, Daniel Hannan, former member of Parliament, wrote a column for one of the magazines, and he said, America could use a constitutional monarch. And I said, well, hang on a second. We have an elected monarchy right now because the presidency with all the police departments at the IRS and the FDA and the USDA, I mean, these are all armed police departments, and they're only answerable to the President of the United States.
Who lives in a mansion?
Right. And so I mean, is that something that really has to get reined back in? Congress has for long abdicated their authority over all these agencies. I think it was West Virginia versus EPA sort of gave them a Supreme Court ruling on it, but I don't see it changing much. The president just announced this Office of Sustainability or whatever it is that's going to send its police department out to look for people that fundraise for people who ask questions about climate change.
Exactly. Well, that's the whole point we've been talking about here. Yeah, we are the sovereign folks. We, the people, do ordain and establish this Constitution. They're our agents. The reason they're acting the way they do, their control, their power, their money, disregard for our rights. We don't vote on anything, man. They do all this stuff and we don't even know anything. It's because we've given it over to them. And that's why I'm saying, emphasizing, get control of your local governments and start telling the federal government to F off on certain things and just be really clear. Get your agents out of our community.
Yeah, and out of our computers. Rutherford.org. What is some of the stuff you're working on before we have to let you go in a moment?
Oh, I would tell you, go to our website at Rutherford.org, Rutherford.org, and read our weekly commentaries. See all the cases we're involved in. We're a nonprofit who funds a lot of cases. And some of my books, I think, will get you educated. Battlefield America, a lot of stuff. And action. You need action.
Well, thank you so much. It's good to catch up with you, John. Best to you and Nisha and everyone that's there learning about the First Amendment at the Rutherford Institute, and I appreciate it. America's new four-letter word is FOIA, and John is very good at getting in there. Thank you, sir, and you have a great afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Coming up, we're going to talk with some folks about safety. It's the Safe at Home program, but I want to show you a quick. It's a picture of John in the day. You say, "Well, who is this John?" John Whitehead and his work with Paula Jones for her battle with Bill Clinton and to get her story out there. From the day, the C-SPAN even existed back then. But it's important that we have that independence, because I don't think if you're going to have a free society, you have to always and continuously be realizing that you can't just accept the narrative. You can't just say, well, I like so-and-so, so whatever so-and-so says is okay by me. Because sometimes so-and-so is wrong. And sometimes you may say, well, I don't like so and so, and so anyone who says anything against him is okay by me as well. And in both cases, they're a fool's errand. Because you will wind up being led into a place where you didn't expect to be, didn't want to be, and all of a sudden you may find out new things. This is why I'm saying, and when the UVA professor was talking about getting her kids to view other students instead of enemies as worthy adversaries. I understand the de-escalation idea of worthy adversary is better, I presume, than enemy. But the problem is that we're viewing each other adversarially anyway. And that's, if you read Marx, if you read some of the foundational authoritarian literature, that's what they base it on in the first place, is the idea of we get divided, we get turned on one another, and then they can kind of come in and say, well, we're going to organize all this, you knuckleheads. You don't know what you're doing, and therefore we have to fix it all for you. Now, that's to keep you safe in here. Everywhere else, our next two guests are going to help keep us safe here. It's the Safe at Home program, Charlottesville Fire, and the Albemarle County Fire Department as well, joining us to talk a little bit about the Safe at Home program and how to make sure that you have everything in your home is safe and buttoned up. Guys, thank you so much for taking some time out with us today. How are you all doing this afternoon? Oh, there you. Hang on a second. There you guys. Sorry about that. So, how are you guys doing this afternoon?
Doing great.
Doing good. Thanks for having us.
So it's and I can't recall a time, and maybe it's just because I have too many miles on the odometer. I can't recall a time when the change of spring time from East Daylight Savings Time to Standard Time wasn't followed with a reminder to change the batteries in your smoke alarm and these kind of things. Yet here we are. Why does it feel like we're still having the same conversation of making sure smoke detectors and things like that are appropriately set up and working properly?
So I'll take it. I think smoke detectors are one of those things that are sort of in the background, working all the time, saving our lives and doing things, but people just don't think about it on a daily basis. They're sort of inconspicuously attached to the ceiling. And so the reminder every year or twice a year to change your batteries in your smoke alarm, is a great reminder to test and change the batteries in your smoke alarm. Honestly, today, most smoke alarms that we're installing or having installed have a 10-year battery life on them. And so you can even change the batteries, but it'll remind you enough to touch it, make sure it's working, test it, and move on.
And that's Joe Phillips with the City of Charlottesville Fire Department, by the way, and Sean Maddox is with us from the Albemarle County Fire Department. And both you guys have slightly different worlds that you live in because Sean, yours is a much more rural community, and the distances are perhaps a little bit more extrapolated in between where the firehouse is and the homes. So does that make it more acute for you at the county level?
It really does. Geography plays a huge difference. Really, regardless of where you live, we want you to have a working smoke alarm. Your chances of survival increase exponentially by having a working smoke alarm and getting that early warning. But even more so when you live 20-25 minutes from a fire station, and our housing stock is quite diverse throughout the county. Some is older, some is much newer. So you may have a longer escape time, or you may have a shorter escape time.
Mm-hmm.
And we marry this conversation of smoke alarms with encouraging folks to sleep with their doors closed, because that increases that amount of time they have to escape during a fire, or even to delay the fire getting into that room and letting them call for help or maybe get out of their window if that's their second means of egress or their other escape plan.
Well, and plus, if you snore like I do, then it's a good idea in general. It's happy wife, happy life. Joe, in the city of Charlottesville, and again, I think it's both websites. It's charlottesville.gov/safe at home and albemarle.org safe at home. Correct?
Yeah, that should get you to both of us.
When you coordinate and you talk about the city, that's a different set of animals and much more close in. It's also important for one another in a neighborhood to be looking out for one another. And when you talk about having a plan, a fire escape plan, Sean, you in the county, it's much more about just you and your family. But in the city, it can involve neighbors and things like that, doesn't it? Start with Joe.
Yeah, if you're in a larger building, you may have a full fire alarm system that will alert everyone in the building, or you may have just a local one that would alert you and your apartment. And so if you know you have something going on in your apartment that you were alerted to, you should then activate the rest of the system or notify those people in your apartment. And then, the same thing, we have escape planning in the city, and it is much different. We normally go right up to the front of the building and in the street area or on the sidewalk. But we're normally gathering with a group of people. The whole building's, having an escape plan and trying to find ways to get out and planning for that. So it is a little bit different than the rural part of Albemarle County.
And Sean, when you're out, I think the message is stay out. But that's why planning in advance is important, isn't it? That there isn't that I got to get So you've got to have that plan in advance so that once you're out, you can stay out. Correct?
Yeah, we absolutely want people to stay out. We see people return for any number of things, pets or medicine or even their favorite hat. Nothing is worth the risk of re-entering that house and succumbing to the gases or the fire. And it's a challenge as Albemarle County changes. The urban ring looks very much like the city as we become dense and we grow up. And so this message, safe at home, is working. It's great to work together in that we can start to look the same when we talk about the urban evacuation look, the same we talk about the rural evacuation look. And the rural area also, we talk about just taking care of your neighbors. Maybe that you're stranded, trees are down, or there's water across your road, or it's not just a fire that we're asking you to take care of each other.
Well, and you mentioned some of those emergency situations, and I want to segue into the Code Red. Is it fair to call it an app, or is it just a program that will give you text alerts if there, as they say in the trade, the excrement hits the air handler in your neighborhood?
Yeah, so Code Red is a platform. It's a company, so to speak. You can register to receive. You can get text alerts, voice alerts, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I believe email alerts.
Yeah, you can get email as well.
And so go ahead.
Oh, and that covers not just fire, but any kind of things. So we've seen some incidents where community members knew that there were, police activity in their neighborhood and that they needed to shelter in place and things like that too. That's included as well.
It is missing persons. Just over the weekend, I believe we had a missing senior in the city that was located in the county. So a great example of how that platform crosses that jurisdictional line, but it's also used in natural disasters or evacuations. So we're encouraging residents of UVA, the city, and the county to sign up for Code Red.
So, and again, a lot of my listeners, concerned of things like this, talk about, people who will ask the obvious question about privacy concerns in the app. The app is just a one-way thing, or is it a two-way thing? And address that just so the listeners will feel more comfortable, signing up for it.
Right. It is just you're registering your own information. It's not being shared with any of other entities. And the messages start out at the 911 center or another emergency center. And then go through this system. And so no one in our area, we don't know who has signed up or who hasn't signed up, or the number that they've given or the email. That's all protected behind the firewalls. And then they're able to just broadcast that information out to your phone or email.
And this includes the university as well, if I'm not mistaken. That also covers, so all the parties in the 3-party agreement.
It does, and actually, you can sign up. You could sign up for Charlottesville, UVA, Albemarle County Code Red. If your parents, live in another city or county, but want to know about Charlottesville's emergencies, it doesn't matter. The one that Sean referenced this weekend, I was in the state of Texas when it happened, and we got code reds about the Charlottesville emergency while we were in Texas. So it will follow you to let you know.
And Sean, talk about other counties, and I want to say this because I don't want Jan Ferrugio mad at me, but this is really it's a great gift of the way the 911 center works in the city, and the county, and with the University of Virginia. But is this something that could be expandable to surrounding counties like Fluvanna or Greene or Nelson?
It surely could. It would require some agreements amongst the jurisdictions. We've been marketing this to employers. For example, I live in Augusta County, but obviously my office is here in Albemarle County. So I registered for Code Red based on my office and my parents' address here in Albemarle, so that I would get notifications if something happens here. So if you work, live, or visit here in the county, you can register for it if it's going to impact you. But it definitely is expandable, and there's this one day hopes and dreams of maybe a larger scale statewide even alerting system where we can communicate.
I know that it's gotten to the point where the folks at North Anna, they need to get messages. Although thank God, knock wood, whatever, that they haven't had to get emergency messages outside of tests out, but they've gone to a text alert system, a smartphone alert system as well. And so I appreciate it, guys. But as with all these things, though, Joe, I think the important thing is have a plan and work the plan, as my financial advisor keeps telling me.
That's correct. Yeah. Have the plan, work the plan, and review the plan. So make sure everyone in the household understands what the plan is. Make sure that, for any emergency, what the plan is. So you may have different sort of levels of that plan based on the emergency and based on the types of things that we're dealing with. And then make sure, and then practice it. Go through having a drill in the home where you leave and go stand outside and start calling each other, whoever's not there, and check on them and things like that. So definitely try and practice the plan.
And again, I want to also thank our friends with the American Red Cross, who, when these fires happen, are often there to help families when they need a place to stay, and everything else has gone sideways on them. So we want to give them kudos. And if you're ever looking for somebody to help out in ways, it's not just blood. They do all kinds of things in that kind of rescue. Guys, thank you so much. Again, it's charlottesville.gov/safe at home or albemarle.org/safe at home. Sean, thanks again for joining us and talking about this a little bit.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us and spreading the message.
And Joe, thank you, sir, and thank you, and you have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
And that does it for us today. Thank you for tuning in to the Afternoon Constitutional, and we'll be back here tomorrow afternoon at 3. Congressman Bob Good of the the House Freedom Caucus, Virginia's 5th District Congressman, is going to take us in to the battle over this debt ceiling negotiation, plus a few others. We're working on it. It's 24 hours from now. Give me a break. I know that much. So I appreciate you being on the receiving end. So until tomorrow afternoon at 3, where am I? There it is. So long, and thanks for all the fish.